Hello and welcome to today's tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful mini tricorne. It's great for weddings, cosplay, all sorts of things. I love mini tricornes. I like big tricornes too, but the mini ones are really fun. I got inspired to make this one in these colours as I was driving back from Wales and it was really snowy. So enjoy and have fun.
This is so beautiful. I am up the west coast of Wales and there's just a little bit of snow on the mountain tops. Absolutely gorgeous up here. Really cold, but so pretty. So pretty.
Hello and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to make this mini tricorne. So the first thing you're going to need is some buckram. Buckram is this kind of woven fabric and it's like hessian that's been stiffened with glue. You use it a lot when you're making pelmets for curtains and things like that, which means you can buy it in somewhere that does like curtain fabrics and curtain hardware, and you can get single or double buckram. I'm going to use single for this hat because it's slightly more flexible. Double's really good if you want to make a really firm top hat or something like that. And this is going to be a mini tricorne, so it's not going to be huge. My first shape is like a donut, and it is about 22 centimeters right the way across, and it's got a big hole in the middle. The next fabric that you're going to need is this, and this is mull. It's kind of a bit softer than felt, but you can use felt. I've used felt before now. Felt's a bit thick, but you know, if you can't find mull, it'll do. And you're going to cover this shape with two pieces of this, front and back, till it looks like that. And I've just used normal glue, Yoo-hoo glue, Bostik, something like that, to glue it to itself. And I've cut it a little bit big on both sides, and then I trimmed it down so that it's exactly the same size all the way around, but I've left the middle there intact. You're also going to need two other pieces of buckram. You're going to need a strip about 2 inches wide, and it needs to be long enough to go round this circle, and this circle is just the piece that you cut out of the centre there, so you need to cut it out quite carefully. If you haven't cut it out carefully, just cut another one. No, don't be sniffy. They're great to cut out as scraps. So this needs to be able to go all the way round with a bit of an overlap. Bit of an overlap there. And now we're going to use my favourite tool, the glue gun. And I kind of know the clues in the name, but just in case, hot glue is hot. Be careful. Alright, so what I'm going to do is pop a nice squidge hot glue around the edge of that and start gluing this down to it, and I'm kind of just fitting it neatly around the edge there. It doesn't have to be too neat, but the neater the join is, the less trimming and faff you're going to have later. Just hold it in position until it's firm. I'm using a mini glue gun, so the glue isn't too horribly burny, and that's probably a good idea because you're using your fingers. So do a bit, then add more glue, do a little bit more, and keep working your way all the way around the hat. When you get to the bit that it's going to cross over, all you need to do is just pop a little bit of extra glue along that edge, along there, to hold it, fold it over, hold it down. Just like that. so you've got like a little pie shape. And the next stage is to put the mull all round this little top part of the hat. So I'm going to start with the bit that goes all around the outside. And you don't need an awful lot of glue, just kind of enough to hold it nice and firm. What I do is I put quite a bit on the actual mull, and then I just put an extra layer around that top edge like so, and that will just help it to grip really well there. And this is just normal kind of yoo-hoo-y type glue, rolling it round really nicely. And when I get to that part, I'm not going to overlap it, I'm going to press it together like so, and then using a pair of scissors that I don't care too much about, I'm going to snip it nice and close to the hat like that, and then it should butt up against itself really nicely, and there won't be a line or any bulk on that point, which is the whole point of putting the mull on, is to soften it and make it a beautiful couture shape. After that, I'm going to trim off this top section here. Trim, 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 like that, all the way down, and then glue on the top. Okay, now all the bases are made, it's time to choose some fabulous fabrics. So we need enough to cover that little bit, and we also need enough to cover that bit. So I was inspired by all that beautiful scenery. So it's cold and grey and miserable outside, so I'm going to go with something that's snowy and wintry but still really pretty. So I've got some green and black tie-dye velvet here, and also because I love the way the trees stand out against the snow, I've got some just plain white cotton, and I'm going to put some lace over it as well, just to get that kind of silhouette feel, I think. You can see I've actually cut out the fabric fairly roughly with loads of seam allowance all around the edges, and that's fine because it'll get trimmed down and sorted out as we go along. There's this piece that's wide enough to go all the way round and have a seam there. I've got a piece for the top, and that's going to be the underside of the hat that curves up, and I also have a round piece that's going to be the piece that curves back on itself as well. So that's two pieces of fabric for that one, a top and a piece that goes all around the outside. Now I'm going to start pinning, and I'm just pinning through the mull. Doesn't have to go all the way through the buckram because that's really firm, but I'm making sure that I'm pinning opposite, so sort of 12 and 6 if it was a clock, and then I'll go 3 and 9, and I'm just smoothing the fabric over, and I'm going to keep pinning until I think that that is all really nicely secure and smooth and lovely on the top. Okay, there we go. So I'll probably put a couple more pins in, but you can see how that's coming. Now I'm using just a fairly large running stitch to secure this little top piece all the way round the hat, and again it's not going all the way through the buckram, it's just going through the mull. If you want to put it through the buckram you can, but there's no need to, and I'm stitching maybe about 1 centimetre down from the top, making sure that the fabric doesn't pleat, and I can take those out and it'll stay nice and smooth all the way. Now I'm just trimming about 1/4 of an inch to 3 millimeters away from that stitching line, all the way around the top to make it nice and neat, ready for the next section. Okay, so there we go, nice and neat. Now this piece, I'm going to wrap it around the hat the wrong side is to the hat and the right side, no, the right side is to the hat and the wrong side is facing outwards. And we're going to put, I said there was loads and loads of seam allowance, look at all that. I'm going to pop a pin in there, and it's not incredibly tight, it's still got a little bit of movement there, and I'm going to trim that down. I'm going to take this off, stitch that piece along there, so turn it the right way out, and then slide it back over the hat, tuck that in as a seam allowance, and then I'm going to show you how to stitch that down. Okay, so I'm just putting the top section of the hat, pulling it down after I've done a nice little stitch to hold it all together. And I actually ironed this top bit so that it would fold over nicely like that. And I'm going to just slip stitch it into place, and slip stitch is a really easy and useful stitch, so it's a good idea to learn how to do this one. It's invisible, or it should be. I'm going to start by just getting a little bit from that side, and I'm going directly across into the fabric on the opposite side, and then directly across into the fabric on that side. So you're constantly doing like a little crenellation like that, taking a little bit from this outer fabric and a little bit from the hat fabric, and working your way all the way round. Okay, I should have started off with a couple of stitches to hold it firm, but I was being lazy. Now you're going to turn over this little bit of seam allowance and just stab stitch it all the way through to hold it down. It'll get covered by a pretty ribbon, so it doesn't have to be particularly elegant. Just going all the way through the buckram and out the other side to hold it all the way round. So we've finished the little top part now. That's very cute, but it's not much use without a brim. Well, I mean it is. It would make a nice bellboy hat, but a bellboy hat is not what we're making. We're making a tricorne. Don't get sidetracked. So remember this piece? What I have done is I have pinned one of my fabric pieces all the way round. Now, if you are insecure about your ability to know where the pins are at all time, I strongly suggest that you actually baste this and take the pins out. I'm going to be lazy and use pins because I've done this a billion times. And I'm also going to use the sewing machine. Now you don't have to use the sewing machine, you can do all of this by hand if you want, but I'm going to use the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch very close all the way round that edge, and I'm going to stitch very closely all the way round that edge, just catching the buckram in on each side. See you in a minute. I actually got 2 rows of stitching there and there. We're going to put the other piece of fabric on the top and pin it down in exactly the same way. And as before, if you're not sure that you're not going to break pins when you sew, then it's probably a good idea to just tack it into place with a needle and thread and hold it there instead. So we're going to do that. Then what I'm going to do is turn it over, and on the sewing machine I'm going to follow these lines of stitching and just stitch over the top of it so that both that fabric and that fabric are held securely onto the base. So I've just put a little bit of bias binding around the edges to make it nice and neat, and we've got the crown and we've got the brim, so we need to put them both together. So I'm just going to cut out, not to that edge, I'm going to cut out inside And I'm going to put about an inch seam allowance all the way round where that inner line of stitching is. Like that. I'm going to snip just to that stitched line, and I'm going to snip maybe every half inch round. And now it's glue gun time again, yay! So going to put that on there like that, turn it inside, peel back one of these, put plenty of hot glue on, press it down, hold it till it's set, then work your way around, doing the same for each piece. Now the final decorations, which I love. This is the most exciting bit for me. So I've chosen like a little lace motif that I'm going to hand stitch very carefully around the edge, just to add a bit of interest to the top there. I've got a lovely piece of ribbon that's decorated with sequins and beads for the kind of central band. And I've also just put a tiny little edge. You can go quite fancy on this bit, but I actually, because I love the lace, I didn't want to cover it up with lots of frills and things like that. So I've got a tiny delicate little narrow bit of cotton lace and a velvet ribbon, again in those kind of lovely snowy countryside colours. And I'm just going to hand stitch those all down. Now, just to finish off, I've divided the brim into three, just kind of 3 equal pieces, and what we need to do next is to turn it up like so and just stab stitch right the way through a few times to hold it nice and firmly, and that's what's going to make the actual tricorne pieces. So it's nearly done, very exciting. Alright, just to finish off then, I've added a little bit of pretty beading. I've popped a feather in as well, and I've glue gunned elastic on, and the elastic is either side of the front point, and that just gives a really nice angle for it to stay on your head. And I've also made a tiny little lining which I'm going to pop inside, making sure that the elastic is outside, and slip stitch down around the edge just to make it all neat and lovely. And the final touch was lots of really interesting feathers. You can't have too many feathers. So I hope you can see how all those beautiful snowy landscape colours of Wales inspired this little hat. I hope you enjoyed that. If it all looked like far too much hard work, you can always come and visit my Etsy shop. It's Sparkly Gem, and commission one or buy one that's already there. And if you enjoyed the tutorial, why not come over and support me on Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/Gemma.